Welcome to Around the Track, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management by Dynasty Financial Partners and hosted by CEO Shirl Penney.
Welcome to another edition of Around the Track, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management. This week, I'm thrilled to be joined by a good friend, Michael Henley, who's also a client and one of the founders and CEO of Brandywine. Michael, thank you so much for being with us on Around the Track.
I'm excited to be here, Shirl. Thank you. And to kick things off, if you don't mind, I have to mention this. I just listened to your podcast with Barry Ritholtz, the Masters in Business podcast. And I highly recommend for any advisors even considering educating themselves on the independent space. I just have to mention this. It's very worth a listen. It's some inside baseball, of course, but I would say it was worth. I listened to it twice. Excellent podcast to listen to.
Michael, thanks so much for referencing the Masters in Business. I really enjoyed sitting down and doing that interview. And I've really enjoyed listening to you on various podcasts over the year as well. So look, you know the rules. We have to get around this track together in less than 15 minutes. So let's jump in. How you break from the gate really matters. So let me ask you the first question. Give us a sense of what's your elevator pitch at Brandywine Oak, and tell us a little bit about the business and why you launched it in the first place.
Yeah, so when it comes to kind of how I explain what I do, if you're a prospect, for example, Shirl, and you're talking about your family and your career and your job and your hobbies, I'll usually say, let me take 30 seconds and kind of tell you what I do. I run a private wealth management firm in Kennett Square, and we work with a select group of senior executives and wealthy families, quite frankly, Shirl, a lot like you. And we help them plan and manage all aspects of their finances and their investments. That's to include everything from their tax return, their charitable giving, their family gifting, the mortgage on their home, obviously their investment portfolio. But most importantly is their family's financial plan. So if you could take a few minutes, I'd love it. If you could share with me some of the planning you've done for your family. And then I basically let the prospect respond with, hey, here's what I have going on, et cetera.
And tell us a little bit about, size of the business. I think, look, you're coming up on, if my memory serves me, in July, it will be your 3-year anniversary since launching the firm. Tell us a little bit about Brandywine Oak.
Yeah, so we oversee about $1 billion for clients at this point in time. We just recently added Lisa Quadrini, a rock star advisor, who's joining us from Wells Fargo. She's the #1 rated Forbes advisor in South Carolina, so we're super excited to have her on board. So we're going to be about 1.5 billion once she is fully transitioned. So we're excited.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And I know that selective inorganic growth for the right partner that fits your culture is something that you guys have been focused on. So congrats on that. Look, we're both relatively young professionals. You're younger than I am. I obviously look much older, but I have always found in my career that high net worth individuals, clients, at the end of the day, the things they really look for is competency in the advice that they're receiving and the quality of service. Right. And sometimes, you could say that experience obviously matters a lot in terms of being able to deliver, high level of competency or experience and knowing what works it does or doesn't from a client experience perspective. But you have built a remarkable business at quite a young age. Can you maybe give advice to other younger professionals that are starting out who maybe don't have the self-confidence or wondering is their age going to be an impediment to them having early success?
No, absolutely. I get this question quite a bit, actually. I would say that, quite frankly, my advice to newer advisors in the business is always to embrace your age. Because while age may be a little bit of a hindrance, I like to think of it almost educating wealthy families on the longevity of the professionals in their life. So if you're a 60-year-old, about to retire and your attorney is also 60 years old, the attorney may or may not be around when you need them. So having kind of longevity is critically important. And we very intentionally built our firm, whereas 80% of the firm, quite frankly, is between 30 and 40 years old. That's not just coincidence. That's very intentional.
That's great. So look, you have been in the process, as we mentioned, coming up on 3 years, launching the business, really evolving and have done a remarkable job of evolving from advisor to CEO. There's a lot of people listening to this conversation that are perhaps thinking about going through that journey themselves. So can you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you, and how would you, Michael, describe your leadership philosophy, and how would you describe yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, the three words that came to mind were really just, just being brutally honest, is just getting crap done. Basically, wealthy families, hire us to basically solve their money problems and to get things done. So we're all about execution. So I would say that my leadership style personally has really just been about executing and getting things done above all else.
Speaking of GSD, this last year obviously has been very challenging environment for all of us. What have you learned about your team or maybe yourself as a leader over this last 12 months and all the challenges that seem to be coming at us within our industry?
No, certainly. And I have to say, I'm extremely proud of my entire team. I would say that, amidst the pandemic, when the stock market was down 40% or so off the highs, we converted about $55 million across the practice from pre-tax IRA dollars to Roth to kind of lock in, where the market levels were, and all the bounce back is all tax-free in the Roth. That required a lot, as you can imagine, a significant amount of forward planning, tax planning, so a lot of tax projections, if you will. They all delivered like complete rock stars. I couldn't be more proud of the execution they delivered last year. So I would say overall, amidst the pandemic, I can't say enough good things about the team.
Yeah, no, that's great. We're all only as good as a leader based upon the quality of the team that we're blessed to work with. So thanks for that. It definitely is all about the team. So as you look back, not just on the last year, but I know you're a very reflective guy, and oftentimes late night, I'll get texts from you, and you'll be talking about what's going on in the industry. So maybe looking back a little bit, but really looking forward, because I know as a young professional, you have a lot of vision about where you think the industry is headed. What are some of the things, whether it's looking back in the present or looking forward, that when you think about our industry, what are some of the biggest issues that you think are facing the industry, and what are some things that we need to do to address some of those things and maybe even turn them into opportunities?
No, that's a great question. I think this is maybe a repeat song. It's probably the last couple of years, but I truly believe that our industry at large is too male, pale, and stale, quite frankly. It's too heavily, male-oriented. Unfortunately, it hasn't changed still, even though it's talked about a lot. So quite frankly, I think that is something that I hope does change. Our firm is now 60% female. I'd love to continue that ratio and perhaps be overweight, or kind of have a heavier weighting towards females in general. I think that is definitely a differentiator, but also just where the industry belongs, quite frankly. I think women are more empathetic. Attention to detail is there. Some of my male, other advisors, attention to detail perhaps is something that is not their strength. So it's just, I think the women being in the industry is certainly critical.
Yeah, over 60% female for Brandywine Oak. That's remarkable in an industry that historically has been low 20s or even below 20%. So congrats on that. I'm proud of Dynasty being north of 40%. So it is definitely something as an industry that needs to attract more talent because we have too many people leaving our industry and not enough people coming in. We have to think outside of the box and find more ways to attract talent across the board. So good job so far with Brandywine Oak there.
Thank you.
Let's shift gears a little bit. And over the course of your career, I'd love to ask you the question: is there a particular success, significant success, or maybe even a large mistake that has occurred, and what have you learned from those things as you reflect back on them?
So I have two answers. This is a great question. I had two answers came to mind. One of which is actually this sounds kind of silly, but actually taking the job at Merrill Lynch in the first place. I was really torn at the time, 12 years ago, saying, hey, I was in mortgage management and going into the stable job versus the risky job of Merrill Lynch. And that was a big move back then. I just, thank God I basically made that decision to go to Merrill Lynch and kind of get into this business in the first place. That was my first, response. My second is stealing my co-founder, Allison Brooks, from the competition. She was on another team at Merrill Lynch in the office. I basically stole her over, and she's been an absolute rock star. We would not have had this growth without her. So I would say if I could do it all over again, I should have stolen her sooner from the other team at Merrill. But those are my two.
Yeah, recruiting great talent is key to success and longevity of the business for sure. Let me ask you a reflective question. When you're not around, I'm going to ask you this question both about your team and your clients, and maybe the answer is the same or maybe they're different. But what is your hope, Michael, when you're not around? What do you hope that your clients and your team would say about Michael Henley?
That's a great one. By far, my response is, thank goodness we can actually understand him. I think our industry uses far too much jargon and using munis and Sharpe ratios and alpha and beta. And I think the vast majority of wealthy families want to be understood, number one. And number two, they want to be on stable ground. So basically, they do not need the fancy financial plan as much as they want to be understood. So the more we can kind of take a complex topic and put it in plain English, I think all the better.
All right, awesome. Last question, as we're turning for home and we're headed fast towards the finish line here. The track behind me right now in Saratoga Springs, there are a lot of teams, jockeys, trainers, owners, horses that are gearing up for the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown Trail, if you will. And that's a big goal. That's a big aspiration that many have been searching for over the course of their career. So as we close out this time together, let me ask you, for you and your team, what is your big goal? What is your Kentucky Derby? It doesn't have to be. You're very young professional. I'm sure you have a long runway in front of you, but over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, however you want to take the question, what's the big goal that you're running towards?
Unquestionably, my number one goal is certainly to ensure that Lisa's transition, all of her clients, is incredibly successful. Her clients really recognize the difference between a traditional wirehouse and independent firm, the conflict-free advice model. I just think that is the biggest focus for me and our entire firm for these next 6 to 12 months. My goal when I came into the business was to be number one on the Forbes or Barron's list. Forbes wasn't around back then. That's probably still my long-term goal. At some point in my life, I would love to be, number one. Maybe that's a far-fetched stretch, but that's my kind of number one lifelong goal. So,
what are goals if we don't have stretch goals? So, look, in the horse world, occasionally we can place a bet. I'm placing my bet on you, my friend. Michael, thanks so much for joining us on Around the Track, and for all of you watching, thank you again for joining us for another edition of Around the Track.